The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Jenaé, filling in tonight for Vinnie. Our investigation is focused on the pending trial for Donna Adelson, a Florida grandmother who prosecutors say played a part in the murder-for-hire plot of her daughter's ex-husband, a law professor, Dan Markel, who was a father of 2 boys. This is their story. FSU law professor and father of 2, Dan Markel, was going through a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson, when he was gunned down in his Tallahassee driveway in July of 2014 by these 2 men, Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera. Investigators tried to piece together why a Latin King gang member and his friend would kill Dan Markel. And as they worked their way through the evidence, they found a link. Sigfredo Garcia's longtime girlfriend and the mother of his children, Catherine McBanawa. Catherine had also dated a Ferrari-owning periodontist from South Florida named Charlie Adelson, who just so happened to be Wendy Adelson's brother. Now, Luis Rivera, Sigfredo Garcia, Catherine McBanawa, and Charlie Adelson have all been convicted for their roles in the murder-for-hire plot. But prosecutors say they are not alone. The Adelson family matriarch, Donna Adelson, is in custody and set to stand trial for her part in the murder of Dan Markel. Now, a jury has already convicted the dentist mastermind of this case, Charlie Adelson. He is serving a sentence for first-degree murder, conspiracy, and solicitation. This was after an 8-day trial in Leon County, Florida. But before those deliberations began, Charlie took the stand to tell his version of events surrounding the murder of his ex-brother-in-law.
Did you cause the death of Professor Dan Markel?
Absolutely no.
Did you hire anyone to kill him?
No.
Do you recall making a joke that buying her a TV was cheaper than hiring a hitman? Something to that effect.
Yeah, it was. Want me to say what?
Yeah, tell me what the joke was.
What happened was, when I gave her the TV set as a divorce present, this is the stupidest thing I ever said in my life. And I said, you know, I was going to get you a hitman, but the TV set was a lot cheaper, so I went with the TV set instead. And I said it as a complete joke, and it was stupid.
Did you ever become aware of efforts by your family, including yourself,
Yes.
to offer Professor Markel money to allow your sister to relocate?
I did, yes.
And do you recall who came up with that idea?
It was my parents.
What were the terms of the offer? How much was it for?
The offer was for $1 million.
Did you ever talk with Catherine McBanawa? And we'll talk a lot about her in a little bit. But did you ever talk with Catherine McBanawa about that $1 million offer?
Yes, I did.
And what do you remember telling her?
The same thing I told everybody else. It came up when she was asking me about, you know, doesn't your sister want to move back home? And I said, yeah. I said, you know, we tried everything we could. We even offered Danny $1 million to move back to South Florida.
That day, now we're on the 18th, July 18th. Did you speak with your sister that morning?
I did.
What do you recall talking to your sister about?
I called her in the car on the way up to work, and I ended up talking to her. She's told me that she was having the TV set repaired. I thought she had told me that Lincoln had thrown something at it and broke the screen. So she was getting a TV fixed.
At some point in time, you hear from your mom. How do you hear from your mom?
I had a missed call from her, 1 or 2 missed calls, and then she texted me, call us ASAP. She told me that Wendy had just called her and that Dan had been shot and that it was serious and that her and my dad are going to be going up to Tallahassee to be with her.
Did you speak with Catherine McBanawa?
Yes, I did.
And what did you tell Catherine Magbanua on your ride home?
I told her that my brother-in-law, my ex-brother-in-law, had been shot, and it's serious. And I just told her I really didn't feel like going out tonight, and just hang out at the house if you still want to come over. She said, no, I'm still coming to see you.
What happened when she arrived?
When she arrived to my house, she came in through the garage, entered into the kitchen from the side door like she always does, and she just looked panicked and upset. I mean, she walked straight in and gives me this big, tight hug and asked me, like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, just a horrible day. But she looked more upset than I've ever seen her. And I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, just come sit down. I need to talk to you.
Where did you go?
We walked into the living room.
And what happened when you got to the living room?
We sat down on the couch, and she started to talk to me. And she said, listen, this is all my fault. But I had no idea anything was going to happen, but this is totally my fault. I spoke in too much detail about your family's personal problems, about your sister, Dan Markel, and the $1 million offer.
What did you say?
I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, my friend killed Dan, and he wants to be paid $1/3 of $1 million. And I'm like, Katie, I'm not going to be part of it. Like, I'm not going to be part of paying for a murder. This is insane. And she's like, look, if you don't pay in 48 hours, they will kill you.
The jury didn't believe his story, and they convicted him. He was sentenced to life in prison. And we now know from court documents that Charlie Adelson, they're planning for him to be transported from the prison where he is in South Dakota to Florida for Tallahassee, that trial that's happening for his mother, Donna. So it brings us to our first question of the night. What will Charlie Adelson say at Donna's trial? Is it going to be different? Let's bring in our guests. Joining us, we have two people who know this story inside and out. Criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor in Florida, Tim Jansen, is with us. Also co-host of the Surviving the Survivor podcast, Emmy award-winning journalist Joel Waldman is with us as well. It's good to have you both on. Joel, let me start with you. What do you think Charlie Adelson will say, knowing that he is being called as a state witness, so it will be technically the case against his mother?
Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me. Hello to Tim, who's a good friend. And I just want to say I'm thinking of the Markel family. I've been speaking with Ruth. These are always very difficult times for them when they head into trial. So I think we should all, respect that and think about the kind of the endless cycle and this ripple effect that victims have in these cases. But to answer your question, what will Charlie say? He's going to stick to this double extortion theory, which is sort of insane, but he's going to do it with a twist. And he's going to say, look, my mom had absolutely no idea. She was just listening to what I was telling her. I didn't want to divulge too much information. And he's going to say that she had very limited knowledge of what was going on, only insofar as that she could help him. There's one little problem with all this that Tim will tell you is now we've got text messages, jailhouse calls, we've got the infamous bump and recordings, wiretaps after that. It's going to be an uphill battle once again for Dan Rashbaum, the defense attorney, and Alex Morris, who's joining him.
Tim, do you think that anything is going to change at trial? He has been behind bars. To Joel's point, there's been a lot of communication that has happened since he was convicted. Is anything going to change once he gets there? And do you think the defense is going to call him as well?
Well, defense may call him, but they may use cross-examination to get their point across. I call them the Velcro defendants. They're both stuck together. This double conspiracy is gonna go forward. The only thing that's gonna really change is maybe the courtroom, and that's because the defense doesn't want the public to come to the courtroom. They want to limit how many people can come to the courtroom. The public has a right to see who was responsible for the death of a prominent citizen. I think the judge will get through that, but I think you're going to see the same defense. The state's going to have a little more evidence. Donna's going to probably testify. The other son may testify on behalf of the state. It looks like Katie is being transported back to testify. But in reality, you earlier opened up with the mastermind was Charlie. Well, the state's theory is going to be the mastermind was Donna, that she put all this in motion, and Charlie was just the conduit, and that Donna was protecting herself by staying away from direct contact with Meg Bonawa and the killers.
That is true. They do have to change it up. We have seen that where prosecutors say something a bit different about who was the ringleader once they do a different trial. That big piece of evidence that the co-defendants had in those trials were these checks from the Adelson Institute written to Catherine McBanowa. So that we know is going to be front and center. Let's take a listen back.
When was the first check issued from Adelson Institute to Catherine McBanowa?
The date on the checks was September 17th, 2014.
And how often did Catherine McBanowa receive checks from Adelson Institute after that?
She received 2 checks a month.
Were all of the checks deposited by Catherine McBanowa?
They were.
Who were all the checks signed by?
Donna Adelson.
Do you think there's going to be more evidence that we didn't see at the first trial, Joel? The trial that we've seen, I say first, but there have been now 4 different trials in this case. This is going to be the 5th. Those checks, though, have been throughout, but anything new in this case?
The short answer is yes. The second part of that question, you're going to ask me, what is it going to be? Don't really know, to be honest, but we do have these text messages. We were covering this very closely on our podcast, Surviving the Survivor, and Tim's big part of the show. We've got, WhatsApp messages where you see Donna Adelson reaching out to a place called Indochina Sun Travel. She's urgently requesting a visa to get to Vietnam. For those people who are not familiar, she tried to get away on a one-way ticket via Dubai to Vietnam with her husband, Harvey. That's when she was arrested exactly 1 week after her son Charlie's conviction. She's arrested at Miami International Airport. So we're going to see these new pieces of evidence. Another interesting piece, I guess I will tell you some of the new pieces that I said I didn't know. The calendar. Donna Adelson was keeping a very meticulous calendar. We poured over this again at STS. You can just by visually looking at this calendar, you can see her controlling nature. She has every day mapped out, what she needs to do, huge check marks, and a big part of that was her getaway plan to Vietnam. And these payments that you alluded to, she was keeping track of that as well.
I told you he knew this case inside out. We are going to talk about it after this break, Joel. Both Tim and Joel are staying with us. Coming up, we're going to talk about, will Donna Adelson be taking the stand in her case?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Do you have anything of value in you?
No, I
Let's have my necklace on. You can take it off. Yeah, take it off. Yeah. And the rings, take everything. You give it to your husband. Because once you arrive at county jail, they're going to make you remove all that.
Donna Adelson and her husband Harvey were stopped. You saw them there at the Miami airport. They were allegedly attempting to board an international flight to Vietnam about a week after their son Charlie was convicted at trial. Here's a look at Donna Adelson as she's being taken into custody.
Hi, how are you? You have your ID?
No, I don't want to give it to you. Why do I have to give this? My attorney said not to. Why do I have to give it to you? This is evidence. She's under arrest. I have to go with. I have to go. I have to go. You don't have any choice. I can help you. No, I have to stay. Please stop this. You need to grab the bags. Take the bags. Yeah. You need to wait outside. Okay.
My husband's almost 80 years old. He can't come with me.
Please, can I go? No, you can't join me there. Oh, don't do this, please.
Please.
Oh,
Someone's got to help him get home. This is terrible. You can't do this. This is
Go ahead, hold on to that for me.
Is that okay with you?
Please. You don't have to have the can plus she's not going anywhere. Please. Please.
Do you have anything in your pocket?
No.
Do you have anything of value in you?
No,
Plus, you have a necklace on. You
Wanna go?
can take it off. I'll take it.
Yeah, take it off. Okay. And the earrings, the rings, take everything. You give it to your husband. Because once you arrive at County Yale, they're gonna make you remove all that.
Can I call my attorney?
You have a passport already?
Where am I going?
Open your finger.
Where am I going?
You're going to the Dade County jail.
Dade County Yale.
You're making a mistake.
It's
No mistake. It's two mistakes.
and try to take the report. See if we can get this off.
So the next place is what, the warrant? What did you say?
Huh?
What did you say the next place was?
Well, see, what happened is the warrant that they have from you is from out of Leon County.
When did they issue a warrant?
So what happened is we have to take you to our warrants bureau for that information to get entered, and then after that gets entered, before we can take you to the jail, to the local jail.
Okay, because I didn't know there was a warrant. How would I know that?
Well, we wouldn't have been able to take you if there wasn't something in place.
So aren't they supposed to inform? Aren't they supposed to inform me if there was a warrant?
Well, I don't know the details.
I don't either.
They had a warrant. The gentleman that you met earlier in the plainclothes.
Yes.
Right. And they were supposed to inform you of whatever. And then because it's a county warrant, that's how we became involved.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Donna Adelson there, not going quietly. She has a lot to say to those officers, and she had a lot to say on jailhouse calls. We even know her son took the stand and said, "My mom loves to talk." So now that she's behind bars awaiting an upcoming trial, here's our next question. There it is. Will Donna Adelson be testifying? Is she going to be taking the stand in this case? Let's bring back in our guests. Still with us, Tim Jansen and Joel Waldman. Great to have you both, because you all have been watching this case, this trial, just the details of it. And from what you've seen so far, Joel, of Donna Adelson, how she's moved in her hearings, how she has kept in contact with so many people who've been connected to this case, what do you think the chances are that she is going to testify in her own defense?
Well, I've spoken to a lot of criminal defense attorneys who are much smarter than I, like Tim Jansen and others, and the consensus vote is that she is 100% going to testify, because she has to explain away this cockamamie double extortion theory. Now, there was a moment during a pretrial hearing, I think it was her first hearing in Tallahassee, where Judge Stephen Everett, who's an excellent judge, had to basically admonish Donna and tell her to stop piping up. She was talking during the hearing, and you saw that video from the arrest. It's kind of the voice of privilege. How can you do this to me? What is the next step? How can this happen to me? You hear her husband Harvey chiming in. So they're going to make her look demure. Tim can talk to this better. They're going to put a little bun up for her hair, I assume, some glasses sloping off her nose. But she will, I believe, take the stand.
Yeah, Tim, when we're watching her in that video, I mean, she is grabbing the phone away from officers. She has no fear about yanking it away from them, saying, "You've got to get a warrant for this." And then when they tell her, "You're arrested for the murder of Dan Markel," her initial reaction is, "Oh, here we go." What do you think it's going to take to prepare her for a trial? Because I believe Charlie Adelson was pretty prepared when he testified.
Well, Charlie was over-prepared. He looked like he was scripted. The defense and his story didn't make sense, and it was too good to be true. Donna's very calculating, very cold, very calm. You saw her. Most people being arrested by the FBI would be screaming, crying. No, she's asking legal questions. She's giving herself a defense of fleeing by saying, "I didn't know there was a warrant." She absolutely has to testify for this conspiracy theory. And she also has to testify about this trip. She's going to have to be the one to say why she took this trip wasn't to flee. It was because she can't get a fair trial. My son didn't get a fair trial. And I'm trying to explain, I've been buying this trip for years. The problem she has is that when she found out who killed her son-in-law, ex-son-in-law, she then took her daughter and her 2 kids to be near the killers. And then she talked in codes all this time. And then when they were arrested by the state, she didn't go to the police and tell them about this extortion theory. So none of her story makes sense. She put her kid and her grandkids in danger. When she was able to come forward, tell the police about the extortion, she didn't do it. And then she talked in codes. Her conduct was clearly conspirator. She's going to have a hard time convincing a jury. I think she'll be better than Charlie, though. Charlie was over-prepared. She's smart. I'll give her that. But she's not going to be credible.
That says something if you think she will be better than her son was, but a jury did not believe her son, so she certainly needs to go there if she has any chances of putting forth a defense. Joel Wallman, host of Surviving the Survivor podcast, and criminal defense attorney Tim Jansen, thanks so much for joining us. We have to get to a break. I'm Julia Jenaé, filling in for Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers here at Vinnie Politan Investigates as the investigation continues. Welcome to Vinnie Politan Investigates. I'm Julia Jenaé, filling in for Vinnie Politan tonight. Our investigation is focused on the pending trial of Donna Adelson. She's a Florida grandmother who prosecutors say played a part in the murder-for-hire plot of her daughter's ex-husband, law professor and father of 2, Dan Markel. This is their story. Dan Markel was in a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson. But Dan wasn't just taking on Wendy, he was taking on the entire Adelson family. So when Dan was murdered, suspicion fell on all of the Adelsons. Then came the arrests of 2 hitmen and a shot girl who was dating Wendy's brother. In the end, Dan's ex-brother-in-law was convicted as orchestrating the murder for hire. But now the victim's ex-mother-in-law, Donna Adelson, will stand trial for her alleged role in the murder plot. So what does the prosecution have as evidence against Donna? Now, when investigators in this case began to get suspicious of all of the Adelsons in the family and their involvement in Dan Markel's murder, they wanted to get the Adelsons talking to each other. It had been a couple of years since the murder. They put together an undercover operation called The Bump. Now, this is where an undercover FBI agent who's posing as a blackmailer stopped an unsuspecting Donna Adelson on the sidewalk. And this entire interaction was captured on body camera video.
Mrs. Adelson? How you doing? Just want to give you this. Listen. No, don't be scared. Listen, just want to let you know that we know that your family has been taking care of Katie and her friend Tuco for quite some time after your problem up north has been resolved. And I want to let you know that my brother, he's incarcerated. He helped your family with this problem you guys had up north. And we want to make sure that he's going through some rough times. We want to make sure that you take care of what he's going through the way you're taking care of Katie and Tuco. Well, this will explain it. Thank you.
This was 2 years after Dan Markel's murder, and there hadn't been an arrest in that case. So they wanted to see what her reaction was going to be. After watching her reaction to this undercover FBI agent, the question was, and what was still unclear, was how much did Donna Adelson know? And that's our question today for our guests who are helping us break down this case and the murder of Dan Markel. Let's bring in our guests. Joining us, attorney and YouTuber Carl Steinbach and private investigator in Pensacola, Florida, Lauren Vellucci. Thank you both for being with us. Carl, I know you have been analyzing this case for years. This is one where we have seen person by person prosecuted. But the question now, after we've already had the hitman behind bars and the middle woman and the son who was supposedly the dentist mastermind, what did Donna know is the question.
Well, I think once the evidence is played out in front of the jury there next month, I think it's going to be abundantly clear to the jury that Donna was actively involved in this case. She was actively involved in the hate that generated the need to actually have Dan Markel executed because they were losing in court badly. They had to protect Wendy. Wendy was going to be set up to not only lose in court again, but also have possibly her job be taken away from her there working as an adjunct professor at FSU Law School. She also was looking at possibly having contempt sanctions against her by the judge. She was also looking at having possibly her bar license at issue. And so there's really a pressing need to have this matter taken care of because they were losing badly in courts and also, like I say, by her job and whatnot. So we know that Donna was actively involved in that. She was a witness to this proceedings. In fact, one of the motions that Dan had was against Donna because she was basically calling Dan stupid in front of the kids and trying to basically brainwash the kids against their father. So she was really very much so involved in this case from the get-go with the motives behind it. Then we also know she was involved in the Geek Squad appointment, which was basically the code, the broken TV that Wendy broke just to set up an alibi. We know she was actively involved in that as well. So Donna's got her DNA all over this. And then when you look at the actual wiretaps and how they listened to her talking to her son, Charlie Adelson, it's so obvious to any jury listening to this that she's talking like a guilty person because any juror in America knows that only law enforcement can conduct a wiretap. So the criminals that they're trying to project in court that they were afraid of do not have wiretap capabilities. So it's going to be so evident to the jury that they were talking in code because they're worried about the law enforcement tracking their involvement in this murder.
Lauren Vellucci, her son is going to try and protect her. He's already done that once on the stand, saying she didn't know about it. I asked her to fill out these checks to go to the middle woman, Catherine McBanawa, but he's going to say that he was being extorted. What does a jury need to hear about her knowledge that you think is going to help them, help the state, convict her of first-degree murder?
Well, like the other guest was saying, her hands are all in this, and they were before. The good thing about going last or fifth, when all of these other people were convicted, is that there's all of the evidence that was presented at other trials, and all of those people are going to testify. So they're going to bring up the emails that she has, the text messages of just saying awful things, and the hatred that she had for Dan. That is going to come off super clear. And then the signed checks that she was signing to Katie, knowing that she wasn't working or doing any business for them at their dental office. And then again, the jail phone calls, the wiretap phone calls, all of that is just a huge smoking gun, and the jury's going to see right through it.
Let's listen to one of those, because after that bump in 2016, the Adelsons did start talking some to each other, and some of those interactions were recorded through those wiretaps, like this call that Donna made to Charlie immediately after she was stopped by that undercover officer on the street.
Did someone write a letter to you or something?
I got some paperwork hand delivered to me.
You're being sued?
No, that's what I thought it was, but I'm going to talk to you.
Did Dad know about it?
The dad at work today, fortunately.
What's, IRS or?
You know, those IRS people, they kind of bother you sometimes, but, you know, fortunately not now. Okay. So I will talk to you. I'll give you a heads up if I'm going to have to drive up that way.
Right.
Okay? And
Does Wendy know that? Is it involved Wendy?
No. So let me just talk to you later, and
What is it? Is there this health okay?
Yeah.
Does it involve me or other people?
Well, probably both of them.
What's that?
Probably the two of them. So you probably have a general idea what I'm talking about.
One thing's for sure in that call, it sounds like he doesn't know what's going on, Carl. The cluelessness is there, but Donna Adelson is trying her best to get this across to him, and you mentioned that a jury is going to hear that and really question why she would be talking in code if she's not a criminal.
Right. I mean, it was really great to see the way Charlie just couldn't keep a lid on it. He had to keep on probing for questions, and the more he probed for questions, she actually goes on to say it's involving you and me. So those are a couple of the most damning words against Donna. And one of the things I can say as a former prosecutor, one of the greatest piece of evidence to have is the defendant's own words to be used against them. And we have plenty of that here with Donna's case. So pretty much Donna's going to sink herself just through her own words alone.
Yeah. Do you think, Lauren, that they were suspicious through those 2 years of people talking or people tapping their phones? Because that seemed like a long time where they weren't being tapped, that they may have been talking in code or just not speaking about anything. She mentions probably the two of us, and I know we'll talk about it later because that probably speaks volumes of where we can go with this investigation. But can you talk about the wiretaps and whether or not you think for 2 years they had been talking in code or just not speaking at all?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because sometimes when you have these twisted individuals, they get away with something for so long that they get sloppy, right? And so it's really hard to tell. I think that probably so. I mean, there was so much wondering when she was actually going to be charged that I think that they had to be watching their back and that they probably had a lot of code words for things and all of that, thinking that they were smarter than everyone else. So my guess would be that they did. That they were looking.
Carl, what do you think the defense is going to do in this case with all of this evidence that the prosecution has just been waiting to use against Donna Adelson? Anything unique about their strategy compared to what we saw in Charlie Adelson's trial?
Well, Julia, I think they're really boxed into the same ridiculous theory that Charlie had for his trial. And of course, we have the same lawyer that's propping up that absolutely ridiculous, insane story. So in any event, I think that the attorneys have an absolute impossible job to create reasonable doubt. They can try to poke holes in the government's case. But when you got things as strong as the words of the defendant that can convict them, you have the obvious hatred of not only just Dan Markel, but you really see the unmitigated hatred of the entire family tree of the Markels, including the grandchildren that they're willing to kill for to get custody of, which, by the way, they're willing to flee the country for once Charlie got convicted. So they were on the run, and I think that kind of evidence as well is going to really sinker the flight evidence as indicative of guilt. So it's pretty much going to be a done deal that she is going to get convicted, and we got the right prosecution team there to get the job done.
Oh, they have been fierce year after year after year. Lauren, real quick before we have to go to break, you're there in Florida. You're not right there in Tallahassee, but I just want to know if it's something that's felt throughout Florida in terms of this case, people still talking about it, because we do have jury selection, and it may be that the defense tries to get this venue moved.
Yeah, I know that in Tallahassee, it still lingers very much so. They are setting up all kinds of foundations at FSU for Dan Markel and his memory. His friends, the community, all of that are very much still involved in this. And it's been 10 years now. And that's what I think everyone is so ready for this family to finally be able to move on. It's horrible that they've had to go through this time and time again with all of these different individuals being charged and convicted, and finally they're getting the ringleader, and that they can finally put this behind them. So yes, it's still very much felt in the community.
All right, Carl Steinbeck and Lauren Vellucci, stay with us. We are going to get to a break, but still to come, the big question: is this prosecution, where we're at right now in the case, Is this complete justice for Dan Markel?
Not only have I lost my son, but I have effectively lost two of my grandkids as well. The Adelson family, in particular Charlie Adelson, has been a major cause of our heartbreak and the murder of our son Danny and the loss of our two grandsons. I have suffered tremendously, and we as a family continue to suffer. It is satisfying to see justice being done, and it would be appropriate to ask for the maximum sentence for the perpetrators of Danny's murder.
That was Phil Markel, Dan Markel's father, speaking at Charlie Adelson's sentencing hearing, a victim impact statement, asking that all of the perpetrators of Dan's murder get the maximum sentence. And now, Catherine McBanawa, Charlie Adelson, Sigfredo Garcia, and Luis Rivera are all serving their time in prison for their roles in the murder-for-hire plot. And Donna Adelson is awaiting her trial. And many have speculated if there are more prosecutions to come. Will Harvey and Wendy Adelson, other family members of Charlie's, face charges at some point? So it brings us to our last question of the night, because the focus is on this victim, this law professor, Dan Markel. Is where we're at now, if there's a finishing and a conviction in the trial of Donna Adelson, is this complete justice for Dan Markel? Let's bring back in our guests who are still with us, Carl Steinbeck and Loren Vellucci. Carl, we've had multiple prosecutions. It's been 10 years. But is this, in your opinion, a representation of complete justice for his death?
Absolutely not. This is only a good start to getting the other two Adelsons. We need to get Donna convicted, and then Wendy needs to be up next, as well as Harvey. Wendy is really the person that started this whole thing. She was the one that was feeding all the hatred from Tallahassee down to her mother in the Miami area. So she knew exactly what to do to push everyone's buttons. So there really is not justice for the Markel family until Wendy is arrested, as well as Harvey. Harvey has his DNA, if you will, all over this crime scene as well. And so he was so much involved. And if you look at the family dynamics as well, which I believe they'll bring in Dr. Rob Adelson, the doctor up in New York, that's the oldest child of Harvey and Donna. And I think when he's brought in to talk about the family dynamics, you're really going to see that they all acted as a wolf pack, if you will, of the Florida Adelsons down there. So I think they would get a conviction, definitely against Wendy. There's close to 200 indicators of Wendy's involvement in this murder, both before, during, and after this heinous crime was committed. And there's also many, many indicators that Harvey was involved as well. So there's definitely not going to be justice until all these four Adelsons are convicted.
Lauren, let me ask you about what we heard earlier, and that's that call that was recorded that they didn't know for sure if someone was recording them, but Donna Adelson said, this thing that I need to talk to you about, it involves me and probably the two of us. And you would think if it involved more people, if Wendy Adelson or Harvey Adelson were really intimately connected to it, then she would have said it involves all of us. What do you make of those words in her perhaps time where she's being as honest as you can be, talking in code?
Yeah, I think that they were the most involved. I do agree. Wendy has a whole lot of culpability in this, but I do believe that they were the two that were the most connected, the ones that were pulling the strings. If you can narrow it down to just two people, I think that they were the masterminds. So I believe that that's kind of what she was talking about. Plus, she wasn't going to incriminate anyone else in that phone call, that she didn't have to. But I just think, you know, as far as the justice thing, this is not justice. These kids have lost their father. They've lost grandparents, uncles, and all of this. This is just a horrible tragedy, and this is just a step to getting a little bit of justice. But justice will never be fully there.
Absolutely. And you mentioned those two little boys. Phil Markel was saying in that victim impact statement that he not only lost his son, but lost his 2 grandsons because the Adelson family has just kept them away from their paternal side of the family. Now, you mentioned that Donna Adelson wouldn't have wanted to incriminate another member of the family, but there was one family member who did incriminate one of the other Adelsons. So the day that Dan Markel was shot, his ex-wife, Wendy Adelson, was brought down to the police station. She was someone that investigators really wanted to know where she was and what she was doing at the time. And she was asked a specific question. She was asked if he had any enemies or if anyone would want to harm her ex-husband, Dan Markel. And here's when Wendy Adelson mentions her brother, Charlie.
Do you think someone would do this for your benefit without asking you?
No.
What good does it serve?
I made my brother, his name's Charlie, the one I'm really close to. He makes a lot of jokes in bad taste, and it was a joke he made. He bought the TV for me this morning that got broken, and I was talking to him about whether it made sense to pay to fix it or whether I should get a new one, and it was always his joke that, like, he knew Danny treated me badly, and it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper to get you this TV, so instead I got you this TV. I mean, he would never. If somebody tried to kill my ex-husband, they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Regardless of who it is.
I mean, it would be different if I thought it were my brother, but I don't think it was my family. Anyone outside my immediate family, that's a tough one. Okay. But I don't think my immediate family did this. So if it's anybody else, yeah.
Okay. Would you think that this guy, Charlie, would even be capable of doing something like this?
No.
Let's just talk.
He's the Joker.
Carl, I know you already think that she was involved and should be prosecuted. She has not been. She was given immunity for her testimony. Unless prosecutors are able to find something outside of that, they couldn't bring charges. But tell me what you think about why she would have implicated Charlie so early in the investigation when investigators had no idea who was involved and how this happened.
Right. Yeah, that's a really big puzzle there, Julia, because she also said her family, so really not just Charlie, but she made it sound like her family was possibly a suspect as well. So I think she was really scared. I think she was surprised by how quick she was brought in. Keep in mind, Detective Isom found her at her lunch site where she's eating lunch with a couple of friends after she had driven up to Trescott and seen that there's all these police cars and police line crossing tape. So she knew something had happened already. She knew the hit had gone down. And so she never asked what happened. And when she's in the squad car, you can see in the videotape there where it starts out, that's for the first time she's found out why she's being brought to the police station. And so in any event, why she did that, I think is probably because she was scared and she'd rather have them point the finger at them, because if they ever came back at her, it's sort of a convoluted mess, and you can create reasonable doubt that way by having so many people to point the finger at. And she knew her family wouldn't flip on her, so she went at liberty to say that. Plus, she already knew that Charlie had been out there saying that, and she told other people. So she wanted to get out in the open, so that was another reason as well.
Attorney Carl Steinbeck, also creator of the YouTube channel Carl Steinbeck, and Lauren Vellucci, private investigator in Pensacola, Florida. Thank you both for joining us and sharing your analysis. That is all the time that we have for tonight. Thank you for following along as we have been breaking down the case against Donna Adelson and the search for justice for Dan Markel, who was gunned down senselessly. He is who's most important in this case, and the victims, the family that's left behind in the wake of that. I'm Julia Jenaé, and tonight for Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.
There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.